Lyle, thanks you also. I'm Michael Gingold from Fangoria, Rue Morgue, etc. And I almost had the chance to see the movie we're about to see with Stephen King and George Romero when I was a teenager. I was on vacation in Rhode Island in the summer of 1982, and what I discovered while I was there was that Providence, Rhode Island was a big test screening site for a lot of the movie studios. They would screen movies there for a week or 2 weeks or three, see how they played, and that would determine what kind of release they got later. I remember seeing ads for a movie that was called Tijuana at the time, and then about 8 or 9 months later, it finally came out under the title Losing It, with Tom Cruise and Shelley Long and lots of other future stars in it. So then the Friday we were there, I went to the local newsstand, opened up the local paper, and I saw an ad for the beginning of a test run of CREEPSHOW. And that opening night, Stephen King and George Romero were going to be live in person at the theater. And I begged my parents to take me, and they said no. So I had to wait till the following November to see it with everybody else. Though actually, CREEPSHOW had originally been scheduled to open in July of that year. It was produced by United Film Distribution, which was the company that had also produced Dawn of the Dead with George Romero, went on to do Day of the Dead, also did cult classics like Mother's Day and Q and Class of 1984. But their very first movie was Kentucky Fried Movie. It was a movie, cheers for Kentucky Fried Movie. Richard Hassanane, who was the son of Salah Hassanane, who ran the United Artists Theater chain, had convinced his parents to co-invest in Kentucky Fried Movie. And when they got a look at this crazy anthology comedy, they said, what the hell are you going to do with this thing? You need to get out there and sell it. So they successfully sold it overseas, but they didn't find any takers in the States. So United Artists Theaters actually created United Film Distribution to release Kentucky Fried Movie. And it became a big hit, and the rest is history. And so when George Romero, after the success of Dawn of the Dead, said that he wanted to do a horror anthology, which hadn't really been in favor for a little while, they said okay. Originally, he and Stephen King had planned to do all of the segments in different styles. There was going to be one in black and white, one in 3D, etc. And then they decided, well, that might throw off the audience just a little bit. But they did decide to shoot it in the wonderful easy comic style that you see on the screen. The only problem was they had all this red and blue saturated lighting, and the people at the lab kept trying to color correct it, and they had to explain to them, no, it's supposed to be all that red. It's supposed to be that blue, just leave it alone. That's how it's supposed to look. CREEPSHOW was Romero's first time working with major names. E.G. Marshall, Ed Harris was up and coming. He had actually starred in Romero's Night Riders. Adrienne Barbeau, who at the time was married to John Carpenter. And John Carpenter went and visited the set once, and then they all went to the same place for dinner. John Carpenter, George Romero, and Stephen King, leading one of them to joke that if something happened to that building, the horror genre was going to be in big trouble. So CREEPSHOW was, again, supposed to open in July of 1982, which would have put it in the middle of a very crowded summer. There was Friday the 13th Part 3, there was Poltergeist, there was The Thing, though The Thing unfortunately was not a success at the time. And so then at the 11th hour, Warner Brothers came along and made them an offer to buy it. And UFD had already advertised it in the newspapers as opening July 30th, but Warner's made them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they basically said, not only will they take the distribution, they'll also pay for all the prints and advertising, etc. The one thing Warner's did not change was the trailer. United Film Distribution had already prepared a trailer for it, and if you've seen it, you can identify it as a UFD trailer because it has the inimitable voice of, and now I'm blanking on his name, Adolf Caesar, the very growly voice guy who did the trailers for Sleepaway Camp, and lots of other, Dr. Butcher, MD, and lots of other films in the 80s. You look at a trailer for that time and you recognize that voice immediately. So Warner Brothers picked it up. They originally planned to release it at Halloween, but Halloween 3 was coming out that October, so they eventually decided to open it in early November. And it became George Romero's first film to open #1 at the box office. It remains the highest grossing theatrical release he ever had. Spawned a couple of sequels, one of which you saw the trailer for. The first of which was okay, the third of which was absolutely abysmal. And don't even imagine that movie exists. And obviously has spawned a new Shudder TV series that's going to be premiering very soon. So we're all very excited about that. So thank you very much for coming to this 35mm screening of CREEPSHOW. And keep on coming to our shows. In October, Prince of Darkness is going to present John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness in 35mm. So please come to that. And we're planning something kind of special for November. We're not sure if it's going to come together, so I don't really want to say anything about that yet. And also, keep coming to all the other great shows. Temple of Schlock is showing Blue Thunder, the classic 80s action movie this Sunday night, so don't miss that. Also this weekend, there's a really cool movie called Villains. It's a comedy horror film. It's really fun. It's playing, I believe, at 4 o'clock Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so come down and check that out. I recommend that one highly. So again, please no talking or texting. Please tip your servers well, and enjoy the film. Woo!